Hollywood lights had once shined bright on Will Everett. A two-time Academy Award winner, his face had been plastered on every magazine cover, his name uttered with awe. But fame is a fragile thing. One bad investment, one public scandal, one too many nights numbing pain with whiskey. Now, years later, Will sat alone on a cold iron bench just outside Union Station in downtown LA. His once polished shoes were scuffed, his suit wrinkled, his hands trembled as he stared at the phone screen displaying his bank account. $2.74. It was over. The city buzzed around him, indifferent. Pedestrians passed by, occasionally shooting a second glance, unsure if the man beneath the hoodie was really who they thought he was. Will's eyes burned with shame. He had gone from being the man everyone wanted to be to someone even he couldn't look in the mirror. That's when a voice broke through. "You look like you lost more than money." Will turned. A homeless man sat on the opposite end of the bench, mid-60s, layered in coats, face worn but eyes startlingly clear. Will tried to scoff but found no energy. "You have no idea." The man smiled faintly. "Try me." Will hesitated, then muttered, "Used to be somebody." The man nodded. "Most of us did." They sat in silence for a while, the hum of traffic filling the space. Will finally said, "I had it all. Movies, fame, wealth, and I threw it away." The man tilted his head. "Or maybe you just forgot who you were underneath all that." Will looked over. "What do you know about it?" The man chuckled. "Enough. Used to be a jazz pianist. Played in Paris, New York, Tokyo. One day my wife died. Grief swallowed me. Never touched a piano again. And the world, it moved on without me." Will stared. "Then why are you smiling?" The man's eyes glistened. "Because I realized something. You don't lose yourself when you fall. You lose yourself when you stop trying to rise." Will blinked. The man stood. "You're not done. Not unless you say you are." Then he turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Will with nothing but silence and a spark he hadn't felt in years. That night, Will couldn't sleep. He checked into a cheap motel, its buzzing neon light flickering outside his window. He stared at the ceiling, thinking about the man's words. "You don't lose yourself when you fall." For the first time in a long while, Will picked up a pen. He began to write. Not a script, not a performance, just memories, pain, regret, hope. He wrote about the fame, the emptiness behind it, about the masks he wore, the lies he believed, the parts of himself he abandoned. It wasn't polished, it wasn't clever, but it was honest. And honesty felt like oxygen. By morning, he had filled 5 pages. He got up, washed his face, and looked in the mirror. He didn't see a failure. He saw a man trying. Will spent the next few weeks drifting between shelters and libraries. He wrote during the day, read at night. Each sentence he put down felt like stitching up a wound. One afternoon, he wandered into a community center offering free storytelling workshops. A flyer read, "Everyone has a story. Come tell yours." He walked in, unsure why. When it was his turn to speak, he froze. Then he began. No stage, no spotlight, just a circle of strangers. And the truth. He shared everything. When he finished, the room was silent. Then came a slow clap. Then another. A woman said, "That wasn't a story. That was a lifeline." Will didn't realize he was crying. He realized he was healing. Word spread, not fast, not viral, but quiet and steady. A local newspaper did a piece. From Oscar to rock bottom and back, Will Everett's storytelling redemption. Then came an email from an old director friend. Come speak at my indie film workshop. These kids need to hear this." Will went, he spoke, and afterward a student approached him. "You're the reason I didn't give up," she whispered. He felt his knees weaken, not from fame, from purpose. He began touring small theaters, libraries, rehab centers, sharing stories, not acting, just speaking. And slowly the world welcomed him back. Not as a star, as Will. The notebook filled slowly, each page a reflection of Will's pain, regrets, and flickers of hope. He didn't know what he was writing, just that it felt necessary. For the first time in years, he wasn't performing for anyone. He was facing himself. One day, an old friend from his agent days called. "There's an open reading for a small indie project. They're looking for something raw. Thought of you." Will hesitated. He wasn't sure he had anything left to give, but the words from the man on the bench echoed again. "You don't climb out by pretending you never fell. You climb by accepting the fall and stepping forward anyway." He walked into the audition room wearing no makeup, no act, just the truth. He read from the script, but halfway through, something shifted. He dropped the paper and began speaking from the pages of his notebook instead. The room fell silent. He wasn't acting. He was revealing. When he finished, no one clapped. No one moved. Then the director whispered, "That was the most human thing I've seen in years." It wasn't about landing the role anymore. It was about reclaiming his voice. Will walked out of the room with nothing but his notebook in hand, and a lightness in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Months later, Will stood backstage at a small theater in Brooklyn. The house was full, not of paparazzi or red carpet critics, but of people. Real people. The kind who'd been ignored, silenced, forgotten. And tonight they came to hear his story. The play was called The Bench. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need explosions or elaborate sets. It only needed truth. And Will had finally found his. As the final scene ended, him, seated on a weathered bench under a single spotlight, there was a pause. Then a standing ovation. But that wasn't the real victory. In the front row sat a familiar figure, his coat tattered, his presence calm. The same man who had changed everything with a single sentence. Will stepped down from the stage and walked straight to him. "I never caught your name," Will said. The man smiled. "That's because it's not important." Will extended his hand, voice steady. "You saved my life." The man nodded. "You just needed to hear what your soul already knew." As Will turned to leave, the man called out one last time, "Now go say it louder!" For those still stuck in silence.